It's time for number 37 in my series of video game movie reviews. With a movie that reminds you of how badass the canceled big budget studio blockbuster film could have been. No, Universal and Warner Brothers, we haven't forgotten about it. We're not gonna stop fucking talking about it. Halo, Forward Unto Dawn is brought to us by director Stuart Hindler and stars Thomas Green as Tom Lasky, a freshman recruit at a military academy in the Halo universe. Tom sometimes has issues taking orders, which is kind of an issue for a soldier. His superiors recognize that there is a great soldier within him, but he needs to stop bucking the system and just let that soldier come out. During his time at the academy, we see how he learns to work together with his team so that he can realize his potential as the leader that everyone knows that he is. All along, a new threat to humanity has entered the galaxy that's about to land directly on their front door, forcing them to have to fight for survival. Halo Forward Unto Dawn, or as it's actually billed, Halo 4 Forward Unto Dawn, which begs the question, why didn't they make it Halo 4 Word Unto Dawn? Missed opportunity in my opinion. Is not based directly on any of the games in the series up to this point. In fact, it's a bit of a prequel. It takes place before the Human Covenant War began. In this universe, the humans don't even know what the Covenant are. We've never encountered any aliens whatsoever up to this point. This movie is one of the first contacts in the universe. Not the first contact. If memory serves, I think in the canon that would be Harvest. But anyway, that has absolutely nothing to do with this movie. This movie was released in the lead up to the game Halo 4. There are in fact parts in the beginning and very end of the movie that are taken directly from the cinematics in the game. It's not a lot, it's only about a minute on each side, but it is there to kind of connect it all together. Now, unlike many video game movies, this movie is very much canon to the Halo universe. So as far as adaptations go, this is one of the most faithful to the source material adaptations there are as far as video game movies go, in that it's faithful to the lore of Halo, not necessarily a specific story in the Halo universe. Now that's kind of a scary proposition, because when it comes to video games and their stories, while we like to think many of them are these great, wonderful, narratively driven stories that would just be wonderful if we just put that exact same story on screen, it doesn't always work out that way. There's a difference between video game story and movie story. That's why when they translate one way or the other, they are adapted. Because things that work in video games don't always work in movies and vice versa. And really, while this statement may piss some people off, fact of the matter is that a lot of the times, a great video game story is just an okay movie story. Now that's not to say that there's not some games out there that have great stories that would make great movies. But a lot of those stories out there, especially up to the point when this was made, while they may be really great for a video game, that does not necessarily mean they'd be great as a movie. Fortunately for Halo, this universe is ripe for the cinematic treatment. As mentioned in a previous video for Halo Legends, Halo was supposed to get a big budget blockbuster adaptation circa 2008. But unfortunately, all the studios couldn't come together on who was supposed to get what money, and it all just fell apart. So now we got the next best thing, which is Forward Unto Dawn. Now, Forward Unto Dawn started life as a web series. It was a 6-part series that was released online in the lead up to Halo 4. And later on, they tweaked and edited it into a full-length movie. Now that's what I'm reviewing here, is the full-length movie version of it. I watched the web series when it came out, and for the most part, what I remember was there is here as well. But my understanding is that there was some editing done to make it all flow together better. Whether anything was cut out or added in, I don't know, but I do know that this is a full-length feature. And as a whole, if you weren't told that this started life as a web series, you wouldn't be able to tell from this edit. Now, even though this was originally a web series, don't think that that means it was on the cheap side. Oh no, this was a very expensive web series. I mean, it's not necessarily like a blockbuster Hollywood movie expensive, but for a fucking web series, this movie looks great. The movie looks really damn good for just a regular old movie even, but for a web series, it's like, holy fuck, how much money did you guys put into this shit? I mean, it's got Microsoft behind it, and they do have a little bit of money to spare. Overall though, this movie movie does look really nice. Everything from the practical sets and design to the CGI. Everything here looks real good. There are a couple of CG characters a bit closer to the end of the movie that are a little suspect, but I think that they knew that when making the film, so they kept them a bit out of focus or didn't show them a whole lot. As a whole though, this all looks really fucking nice. And surprisingly, they used a lot less CGI than one would think for a production this size. There's a lot of shit they built for this movie. The sets, the props, all that. They even built the fucking warthogs from the game. Now these may have been holdovers from the ones they built for the original movie that never got released. I don't know, but I do know the motherfuckers are there and they work. And they're not CGI, they're 100% real. But they even have like the guns, the armor, all that shit. And it's all practical and it all looks really nice. As a whole, from a technical perspective, this is a really good looking movie. Now seeing as how this is based on an action franchise, you would expect this to be an action movie. But that is where you would be a bit wrong. While there is action in this movie, the vast majority of it deals with these young characters getting to know each other and learning how to overcome their obstacles. It's actually a pretty cool take and it is all pretty interesting. The movie gives you a really good amount of time to get to know all the characters involved. You really get invested in Lasky and his team so that when the shit really does go down in the end, you actually care about what happens to these characters. And yes, the shit does go down in a fairly satisfying way. There's lots of world building in this movie, and that's one of the things Halo has always been known for, is having very deep lore. And you see a lot of that here. But something else Halo's always been known for is shooting the shit out of some bad guys, and we get that too. Once the movie decides that we've had enough time getting to know all these characters, and we've had all the drama and all the development and all that, it quickly ramps up to shooty shooty boom boom time. And much like the rest of the movie, this part of the film is not cheap and looks great. It's also not a bunch of mindless running around shooting faceless bad guys either. There's a good portion of it where all the kids are being stalked by a sword-wielding invisible elite. And these parts of the film are really tense and very well done. Our cadets are not ready for an enemy like this or this situation. And when the shit goes down, they kind of fall apart a bit until that beacon of light, that savior of humanity, that bad motherfucker, the Master Chief, shows up to kick some ass and rally the troops together. Yes, series protagonist the Master Chief does show up in this movie, but this movie is not about the Master Chief. And I think that this was a very, very, very smart idea. You see, in the Halo games, you play as the Master Chief. You never see his face or anything like that because you are supposed to be the Master Chief. So if this movie took on the task of having the Master Chief as a main character, I think it would have been difficult to portray that character because I think that character means something different to everyone who plays. So who I think the Master Chief is could be different from who this person thinks the Master Chief is. Sure, there are character traits about the character that we do all know, but the real deep inside stuff, the stuff that you would need for a movie for this character, isn't really there because that's you. So relegating him to a side character in this film, I think was a really good idea because we got to see those well-known character traits from the character. And we didn't need a whole lot of background on this side character because of the way that he's used here. So they essentially got to use the Master Chief. We got to see this character that lovers of Halo have fallen in love with, but they didn't have to do anything to the character or inject him with anything that we didn't already know. I.e., they didn't have to ruin the fucking character. We know Master Chief is the man of few words, badass motherfucker who will lay waste to everything in his way, and that is exactly what he does here, and he does it beautifully. Now there is one thing about the movie that could throw a few people a little bit off, and that is the very end of the film. Now I'm not going to spoil it here, and it's not the end of the story of the film. There is a little part afterwards that's years later. Now this part of the film ties directly into the game Halo 4. So if you're not familiar with the Halo universe and that game, while you won't be like totally lost, you will be kind of wondering what the significance of this about 60 seconds of footage you get is. And it's not gonna like ruin the experience or anything, and you'll get what's going on, but it won't necessarily have as much relevance to you unless you're familiar with this material. That, and at the very end of the movie, as well as the very beginning, there are clips of the cinematics from the game. This is only about a minute each, so it's not that big a deal. And the cinematics in Halo 4 look really fucking good. So these look real nice, but really fucking good is not real, and you will be able to tell the difference, and you'll kind of be wondering what exactly is going on here? Because these cinematics don't necessarily have a lot to do with the actual movie you're about to or just did watch. They kinda do, but I'm not going down that rabbit hole to explain what all these cinematics have to do with the film. You don't need them, but they are there, and I think that for people that aren't as familiar with the universe, much like the scene I mentioned a moment ago, they could actually act as more of a point of confusion than anything else. Once again, not gonna ruin the experience, but especially the part at the very end, some people that aren't as savvy within that universe will probably be wondering, what exactly just happened? I see what happened on screen, but how did we get there? Not the end of the world or anything, but it is there. Overall, Forward Unto Dawn is a very interesting, entertaining look into a little seen part of the Halo universe. Now, seeing as how this is a more character-driven film, if we didn't have the performances to go along with those good characters, it would ruin all of it. Fortunately, everybody here does a pretty good job. Thomas Green and his team of cadets all do a fine job here. They all turn in very believable, likable, entertaining performances that really make us root for them and care about what happens to these characters. Really, everybody in the film does a solid job. There's no bad performances here. Everybody here does a really good job. And honestly, the fact that this started life as a web series and it has this good of performances just blows my mind all that much more. And this was a web series in 2012. This wasn't like nowadays where Netflix has movies they make, which those are technically internet movies just like this one originally was. No, this was 2012 when we didn't get a whole lot of that. Yes, there were web shows back then, but typically their budget and just overall production values were a lot lower than everything else. So kudos for them for getting some really solid ass performances out of everybody here. Guys, at the end of the day, Halo Forward Unto Dawn was a really entertaining film that is a lot better than you would expect. It is a little bit less action oriented than you would expect, but that's okay because what it gives you in place of that is some really good character development and an interesting and entertaining story. We got some really solid performances, some great special effects, and just overall a really entertaining movie that is absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
This was a surprisingly well-made, entertaining film, especially given where it began life. As of the recording of this video, it's available on Netflix for free, so there's not really any reason not to check it out. And if you're a fan of Halo, or even if you're not, check this flick out, and I think you'll have a really good time. So there it is, guys, my review of Halo Forward Unto Dawn. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Harvest.
Stay close to me. I'm your best chance for survival.
So what's next on the video game movie review list? He's back. But this time, it's for the last time. Is this Uwe's final video game movie adaptation? Yeah, I know, but I double checked. For real this time. God, I hope so.